in the modern world, we lack rites of passage. We don't really have them anymore. That whole project of making yourself into full human being is only meaningful if it is for the connection, if it is for the community. Let's come together as a community and let's have an experience together where we tune into each other. When you're standing there with tons of other people and you're tuning into each other, that in itself is a spiritual experience. It's trying to get into some kind of core thing which combines all of us. We all get born, we all go through hardships, we all fall in love. That's really what I'm trying to go for, a universal tale put through music.
Hi, so we are at Midgardsblot in Norway, and we are talking to Jonas Lorentzen from NEBALA. Hi.
Hi.
So like beautiful mounds today. And I would like to ask you first a little bit just about yourself, how you started to do music and how you arrived at NEBALA.
I started doing music ever since I can remember, really. I come from a musical family, so everyone in my family more or less plays music at, to various degrees. Some high professional, some more just for fun and for family gatherings and so on. Grew up with the piano and guitars and everything in the house. So I always played music. It was really more like something that was a part of my whole world since I can remember, really. And my family is also, some of my family are musicians in the church, so it was always very spiritual music in some sense that filled my time as when I was growing up. And so my mom used to say that my musical career started when my aunt had brought a conservatory choir to play some concerts in the island where I grew up in Bornholm in the Baltic Sea. And she put me on a bench or something and had me sing a nursery rhyme, an old Danish nursery rhyme. So yeah, it was always a part of my life, really. And then through the ages, I would play all kinds of instruments. I would, the voice was always my main instrument. I would play, rock and roll, and later on indie rock, and some, we would dabble in kind of new metal stuff in some bands, and just all over the palette, really. But I was always interested in the power that music has to bind people together, and also to enhance spiritual things, you could say. Oh, beautiful! Someone's singing in the background. How lovely!
I don't know.
People walking around the mountains singing.
Yeah, I don't know if microphones pick up, but they probably will.
Whatever it is, it's beautiful.
That's how it should be.
It's how it should be, exactly, at this place. No, but so yeah, that was always a part of what interested me, and I got very interested in India at a very young age as well. My aunt would travel to India quite a lot, and she would bring back weird instruments, and she became a part of the whole Osho cult. I don't know if you know about that, but there was a big documentary on Netflix called Wild Wild Country. She was part of the whole cult, and she would come back with weird incense and books, and yeah, I got very inspired by how Indians use music to enhance, mantras and all these sort of things. And it was when I went to India the first time and I actually heard throat singing from Tibetan monks sitting in their temples and doing their chants, that I was completely blown away. I was actually trying to meditate at the time when I was sort of doing what is called a walking meditation. And when I came by this little temple and they were sitting there and chanting, when I heard their chant, I sat down and immediately I felt, okay, now I'm meditating, So yeah, I got really inspired by all these Indian sort of spiritually charged music. And then Christopher from Heilung and we've been friends since we were 18. And I was renting a little studio in his studio. I was working on my own projects at that time, and then he was like, Jonas, you gotta come and hear this weird thing I'm doing with this shaman guy called Kai, and you know, I think we're inventing something quite interesting here. And I think he played me Alfa dir Haiti. That was probably the first one I ever heard, and I was like, but this is this Nordic thing, this thing that comes from my tradition or my geographical area, you could say, but it's kind of mixed with throat singing and with sort of chant mantra type things that I heard in India. So I saw this beautiful marriage of the two worlds, and got really, really inspired by that. And of course later on I joined Heilung and played with them for the 2 first years. And during that time I always had this urge to go out and do my own thing and make something which was something that sort of came from my particular channel, if you want to say it like that. And all of a sudden the idea of NEBALA sort of took root at that time. And I started NEBALA, left Heilung, big decision, tough decision, but felt I needed to do it because Heilung is a particular spirit of its own, you can almost say. And you need to serve that spirit, I feel. At least that's for me. It might be different for others, but that's how it was for me. And I felt I couldn't do that honestly and with full dedication if I wanted to serve the NEBALA spirit, if you will, instead, with what I can do. So that's why I left Heilung and then started NEBALA.
So NEBALA spirit, what it is?
What's the NEBALA spirit? Well, this is one of those things that might be even slightly ineffable, almost difficult to put in, almost impossible to put into words. Because it's what calls to me, I would say. When I started NEBALA, I wanted to, actually from the very beginning, the first album I wanted to make was an album about rites of passages, or rites of passage. And I wanted to do that due to myself having been through a lot of great upheaval at that time. My wife and I breaking up with Heilung. I felt out of place in the place I was in. I needed to sort of go on a hero's journey to find myself in a way. And so I always wanted to make this album about rites of passage. But at the time when I started NEBALA, I felt I wasn't ready for that big task. And so, you know, I thought, how about I go to some kind of source material, to some kind of very basic and primal, and therefore I kind of felt that making an album about sexuality, about sacred sexuality, the very foundation for why we're here is because we're sexual beings that procreate, you know. But that comes with a lot of other things as well, which we can get into, of course. But I was sort of like, again, it's difficult to say how does a artistic idea take root? How does a spiritual idea take root? It's you're called to it somehow. It's difficult. It's like you're just like, this is what I should do, and then you go out and figure out how to do it. You know, I think even this might be a slightly pompous analogy, but you know, with Einstein when he came up with his E equals mc squared and all that stuff, it came to him in a way, and then he used his mathematical amazing brain to figure out what is this. That's a very simplified way of saying it, but that's somewhat the truth, you know. So a creative idea sort of comes out of nowhere, almost like a lightning strike. It's just like, okay, this is what I need to do, and then you gotta go out and figure out how to do it. And and now finally on this second album, I'm working together with Christopher again from Heilung, who's producing the album. I'm working with a new team of musicians as well, and not completely new, but some of them I knew. And it's a new chapter, I would say. It's a full-on reboot, and we're finally doing it now. And And yeah, so the spirit of NEBALA, I suppose, if you want to sum it up, it's trying to go ad fontes, which is a Latin word for to the source. It's trying to get into some kind of core thing which combines all of us, or that connects all of us as human beings. No matter where you are on this globe, there are certain very, I would say, almost primal, and there's a connective tissue between all of us. We all get born, we all go through hardships, we all fall in love, there's these universal themes. I think I'm trying to be quite universal with NEBALA, actually, even if I'm from the Nordic countries and it's gonna shine through that it has that Nordic vibe in the sound. I think that's really what I'm trying to go for, a universal tale somehow put through music.
So rites, especially rites of passage, why is that important?
Well, we can go a little bit like sociology on this one, almost, because I think we, in the modern world, we lack rites of passage. We don't really have them anymore. If you go to very traditional peoples around the world, there are tons of very thought out, very structured, necessary rites of passage that human beings go through. I just heard Alexander Bard, who's a Swedish philosopher, I forget the woman he was talking to, she was incredible as well. They were talking about this tribe where a woman is prepared for birth, for instance. So that's, the great rite of passage for a woman, right? It's her giving birth. And she goes through this with a lot of support from her tribe, from the females in the tribe, and lots of support. But once she has to do it, once she has to actually give birth, she has to go out on her own and be alone. Be alone in somewhere, in some setting, and do this whole thing. And then there's tons of other things that related to that, and things that she has to do and so on. But it's like, it's taken very seriously. These transitions in life are taken very seriously. And those are the transition in life that we have to take seriously. We should have rights for these things. There's people still get confirmed in the Christian religion today, but most people don't really take this as anything else, especially in Scandinavian countries, as an excuse to get a lot of gifts and a lot of money and go get drunk with your friends. It's not really, hey, you've been a child up until now. Now we're going to take you out in the woods. Now we're going to put you through some traumatic experiences, and you have to get through that in order to come back and be really of service to the community. And I think it's really problematic that we don't have this, because I think this whole thing about being of service to a community, you can only be that if you build yourself up in the best possible way. So yeah, I think it's a problem in our modern society that we don't have an emphasis on different rites of passages. Rites of passage. I don't know why I keep saying it like that. Rites of passage.
I really like the term.
Okay.
It's kind of, when you spell it, you sort of kind of remember that.
Yeah.
Okay, this might be something.
Yes.
That might be something that's important.
Mm-hmm.
Because I would say current, modern society, it has those rights a little bit, but it's like a whisper.
Yes.
Of what it used to be. And
yes.
It doesn't really go to your soul too much, and mass culture is basically commercial mass culture is designed to distract you, so you live your routine life, which could be pretty boring. Then you have mind-blowing entertainment where you can lose yourself, and so you have a little bit more energy for next step of boring life.
Yes.
It doesn't bring stuff into your life too much. It kind of let you unwind, let you, forget yourself, kind of afloat your brain, but not much. What I like about the Stena here, that Midgardsblot represents, and musicians that play here, is that it somehow feels more rooted, more connected.
Mm-hmm. I think I like what you're saying there. I think it's I think what we've done is that we've almost thrown the proverbial baby out with the bathwater from everything that was before. we sort of see it as barbaric and all these kind of things. And it's a really beautiful, meaningful task to, as you say, look to the roots. What have we forgotten, you know? Because as you say, we still have the whispers there, you know, we still have the whispers. And people go out and make their own rite of passages all the time, you know. They'll do cold plunges and try to, you know, shock their body, and they'll do extreme sports or you know, whatever it might be, to sort of put yourself out there on the edge of existence, right? Where you really start to see some things, you know. And I think, again, that whole project of making yourself into a full human being, I think, is only meaningful if it is for the connection, if it is for the community, if it is to serve a community somehow. Do you see where I'm going with this? Yeah. So you know, I think places like Midgardsblot, which is community oriented. Yeah, no, it's for me, that's really where it's at, really. Like, also as I grow older, a lot of the things I want to do is to serve community, to create things that will serve community, and try to create spaces where people can really explore things that they've forgotten. One of the things I'm doing at Midgardsblot this year, for instance, is I'm running a few workshops, which are basically just singing workshops. And they're not singing workshops in the sense of like, hey, let's make you try to sound like this, that, and the other, or let's make you sound great. No, it's more like, let's come together as a community and let's have an experience together where we tune into each other and where we sing with each other. And it doesn't matter if you've had any prior experience with singing, just come here and open up your voice, because that's another thing we've forgotten, you know. Einar Selvik talks about this all the time, right? The whole point of like, we've stopped singing. We've lost the songs for birth, for death, for marriage, for working in the fields, for whatever it is, you know, all these different songs that were always there to carry us through life. They're sort of gone in a way, you know. Or maybe they're not completely gone, but they're definitely, like, again, a whisper here and there. And so one of the things I try to do there with that project is to make people sing, you know, to create a safe space, a beautiful space where people can dare to open up their voices, the voices that they've forgotten, you know, because everyone is a wandering instrument. Everyone has that instrument in them all the time, you know. So that whole idea of like, oh no, I'm not a singer, I can't sing. Well, it's all because music has been commodified. We had industrialization. We took everyone out of the fields where they used to have their places to sing, and now they're in big factories and these clanking noises, and there's no space to sing. And then music got commodified. Kind of weird for a person who wants to live off music to say that commodification of music is a big problem, but it is, because all of a sudden music is something done for you by others, by experts.
By AI.
Now by AI, it's getting, well, yeah, you know, the thing is ramping up, right? So now it's not even done by the musicians anymore. Now it's done by a robot for you, you know? Rather than music being something we participate in, something we do together as a community, something we do to remember. You know, back in the day, in the 1800s perhaps, you know, or maybe even further back, you would probably have to go, especially here in the West. You know, you'd come into a local inn and people would be sitting around there, and the local band would go ba ba dum bum bum, and then everyone would know, oh, now that's the one about the farmer and his wife and the blah blah blah, and everyone would just, you know, sing along, you know. Oh no, they never, oh they never, oh, you know. Well, I've been a wild rover, and everyone would know that song. Everyone would know all the lyrics and everything, you know. That stuff we've lost. So right now, again, because we can't just say, okay, now everyone learn 100 folk songs and let's start this up again. We have to start very, very basic. So what I'm doing in these workshops is just to start, let's just tune in. Let's just sing one note together. And let's try to go like, oh, oh, or just like do a voice, do a sound, do a scream like a wolf. Just open up that whole space in here. And that sort of stuff I find extremely meaningful these days. So along with all the creating a whole album of rite of passage, and it's a big, hopefully a big magnus opus that I can look back on when I'm older. Where I'm really at right now is that I want to create community-based happenings, you know, that will, yeah, make singing great again. Make singing great again.
Yeah, that's a wonderful goal, and I think I really like to go to one of those workshops. I don't know if I can, because
3 o'clock tomorrow, 3 o'clock day after.
yeah,
Probably one on Saturday as well.
yeah, that's wonderful.
You'd be welcome. I'd love to have you. Yeah.
So, like, just to clarify a little bit, those are basically singing workshops.
Yes.
They have to do anything with some spirituality, or
Yeah.
it's more? And if you can open up a little bit about it.
Well, I mean, I think anytime a big group of people come together and sing together, like for instance what they do, I think in Latvia, I think they have these huge, I think it's Latvia or Estonia maybe, it's probably Estonia. Someone's going to kill me about this later on, but it's one of those countries. They have these massive events where they sing old folk songs together, you know? And so it isn't necessarily a massive event to honor a god or a goddess or something like that, but it's just to come together to sing. And I think that in itself, just in itself, is a spiritual experience. When you're standing there with tons of other people and you're tuning into each other and you're feeling those vibrations from yourself to the other back at you, that whole feedback loop, that in itself is a spiritual experience, you know? And I think also when we sing together, this is my own thing, you know, but I think we do call in spirits when we sing to each other. We call in protective spirits. There's an old story, I think it's the saga of Eric the Red, where Thorbjörk Littelvölva, so a Völva, comes to a village in, I believe it's Greenland, and they are having problems with their crops or problems with food and all these sort of things, and they've called her to come and do a divination and then find out what they should do to get the crops back and so on. And she asks if there's anyone who knows the old Vardlokkur. That's actually what the tent is called where I'm doing the workshops, called Vardlokkur. And which basically means the spirit songs, or the songs to call the spirits, you could say. So I think when we do that together with the intention of tuning in together, with the intention of healing, of using music as healing, we call in healing spirits, we call in all these different things. And then of course you can say, oh, I call on you, Freya, for this, and I call on you for that while you're singing. That's possible, but I think just the act of doing it, I think is enough, because again, in the act of doing that, you could have a person from Africa, a person from, you know, from this part, from South America, from Japan, whatever, and they would stand and they would feel that same energy completely without any conceptual anything on it, just the energy of it. So yeah, I find that extremely spiritual, because one of the most spiritual things one can do is to sing with each other.
So I have a little bit tricky question. So some obviously people perceive as spiritual experience when they are in high spirits, when they're in some ritual, pagan, church ritual, or I don't know. But is it always true that spirituality equals that high excited state?
No, no, that's not a tricky question. That's a really good question, and it's a very simple question. The answer is no, but I can elaborate, of course. I think some of my most significant spiritual experiences have been extremely dark in a way. Have been extremely challenging. Have been experiences where I was confronted maybe with ugly sides of myself. That could be during a deep meditation, or it could simply be, I mean, a really good example was when my wife and I broke up. And some of the things I would do in order to go out and really channel through all the pain that I had was to go out in this place called Hampstead Heath. I was living in London at the time. Hampstead Heath is a beautiful, beautiful park in North London, and I would go out there at night and simply scream just really channel these blood-curdling screams through myself, to really channel that energy through. And what happened actually was that once I'd done that to a point where my voice couldn't do it anymore, and I was totally sort of just sitting down in tears. I was completely alone in darkness in this park. What happened was that my pain, all of a sudden, my pain kind of reverberated out, and I felt the pain of for some reason my brother's pain with something he had been going through, my father's pain with him and my mother, and it kind of just expanded to the whole world. I realized that this pain that we all go through, it's universal pain. And if I channel through my pain, if I go through my pain, I actually, in some sense, in some small way, I can use that experience to help others through their pain, if that makes sense. So that was extremely painful, and it completely changed my view. It made me much less selfish, I think, in a way. I hope. And I've had a very, very dark conversation which made me aware of some, it always gets so difficult to talk about this, but it made me aware of some traits in me that were unhelpful, that didn't help me or my community or my close loved ones. And that's hard, to be confronted with those ugly sides of oneself. That is really, really hard. And I was lucky enough to be able to face that and come through that and come out on the other side, and hopefully have something to contribute to the wider society and to my small community as well.
Many people, they end up in various esoteric movements, I don't know, religion, just because they seek very excited moments, such as bloods and like joint drummings and so on. But it's important to remember that life is not just that. It's basically another form of escapism, and if you just side with that excitement part.
It can be, yeah, absolutely.
So, and I think it's important to remember, and I cannot make any, quotes or anything, but probably all the mystics, they would agree that it's not just that state, and sometimes you end up even in the dark. I think Christian mystics, I don't remember who was it, and it's like, if my memory serves me right, they talked about the dark night of the soul. When you are like, so you're connected with God normally, you kind of talk to him and you feel like abandoned.
Yes.
And that's like also useful for your soul in a way, because that's like, again, that right, and something transformative that happens to you, kind of let you face something. Or I think in Buddhism they have that, those saints in Buddhism, they feed demons with their imperfections, and they, so that's kind of shadow work, I would say.
Yes. But can I add something to that?
Sure.
Yes, but shadow work can also become something you can become addicted to. Some people, they be completely addicted to shadow work, and that can be extremely destructive as well. You need to remember also to just chill out and go have some fun, and go connect with somebody, because what you've done is that you've put yourself so much into the shadow, and you're so sort of ruminating on your own little shadow box that you forget that there's this grand world around you. So everything is, it's always, you try to make the balance, right? That's the thing. And but yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've met people who've become so far down a shadow work path that it was almost impossible to have any kind of connection with them. That's not helpful either. At the end of the day, maybe like the Dalai Lama says, you should keep the childlike mind, right? And then he'll stick out his tongue or something like that. Look, I'm a child. That kind of like exploration of the world. That childlike mind is important to, I think, keep throughout. But yeah, absolutely. Some of the big transformations, probably the most important and meaningful transformations, they do come through darkness, Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's very important to talk about it, because like, just so people hear those opinions and they don't just side to one side or another. Maybe it's good to also mention Christianity in that context, because, like, especially in this environment, in the scene, usually Christianity quite often seen as a suppressor,
Yes.
and there are a lot of jokes like
Yeah.
that somebody dies and goes to heaven, and there is Odin there, and ha ha ha,
Ha ha ha.
what's
Yeah.
a surprise?
Yeah.
So, what's your take on it? Where is Christian spirituality fits into the picture?
I I love JC, man. I love JC. What the hell? No, I mean, I think I have fully understand. I fully sympathize, and even empathize to a certain degree with people who have a big, pun intended, I suppose, towards Christianity. I totally get it, because Christianity has been the empire-building religion, right? So it has been tangled up with very suppressive, colonialist. We're better than you. We're coming out to save all you, poor people in South America, and all that stuff. So yeah, and everywhere else really. The term Christendom was the original term, right? Which meant to sort of mean where Christianity reign or would reign, and that sort of thing has sort of fallen quite apart, I think, but is still there in all our institutions and all that. So I totally get it. But when you go to early Christian mysticism and so on, I mean, it's a treasure trove of religious and spiritual ideas which are super, super helpful. You go to the different Gnostic traditions that were there, just super female-led. Mary Magdalene has a huge role in that. I mean, I could sit here, if we really wanted to go down, I could go down a rabbit hole on Christian mythology and so on. I think also Christianity was, I think a lot of people, also here in the Nordics, they were very happy when Christianity came along, because now they didn't have to sacrifice their baby every time there was a tiny famine, or something like that, because Christianity brought in respect for the sovereign human being, and I think that's important as well. I actually, on the new album, I am going to use this might be a put off for some people, Christian ideas, especially the Gnostic ones, on the Rite of Passage album. And I'm even using some lyrics from, there was a female mystic about 1,000 years ago called Hildegard von Bingen, who actually made her own language, her own spiritual language, which made me think of, like North American tribes and even South American tribes, where they have certain songs which are not really words that you could use in a normal everyday conversation, but they are sounds that have a particular power. So there was all kinds of funky things in the early days of Christianity. Also the whole thing about actually Christianity being a female-led cult back in the day, I found extremely interesting. Because what you had was this very patriarchal Greco-Roman kind of idea world that was sort of dominating back then. So, you even have like different Roman, it would be like a consul, or maybe not a consul, but a governor or whatever, saying that he received a delegation from the Christian faction in the city, and they were all women, and he was very puzzled about that, and so on. Later on, of course, all that got mingled up with the Greco-Roman Empire, and therefore it became extremely patriarchal and I would say probably ruined because of it. I mean, not that there weren't still interesting mystics throughout the ages, like Franz of Assisi and so on and so forth, but or Pseudo-Dionysius. But yeah, in the very early days of Christianity, it was a very funky cult. And they were up to all kinds of very, very interesting spiritual ideas. I really like, there's a book I would recommend everyone to read called The Immortality Key. Do you know about this one? Very, very interesting book. So yeah, there's a lot of interesting. Again, let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. Anything in this world can come pathological. Anything in this world can become sick and filled with an empire dominator spirit. But that doesn't mean that that is all that it is. There's actually a lot of interesting things to find in Christianity, and I'm in some small part gonna highlight some of those things with this new album, hopefully.
And speaking about your beliefs, if you are
Yes.
of course comfortable to talk about it, what they are?
It's almost like asking me about my sexuality, man.
I mean, you don't have to answer.
No. I mean,
It's
I'll
a
try to.
personal question, I know.
It is a personal question. I'm not a part of any particular lineage or particular religious faith, but I'm certainly not an atheist either. I believe that we know very little about. I believe that this whole life is a mystery. There's a total, insane, constantly unfolding and unraveling mystery. And so I believe in, like I said earlier, to keep that childlike mind as much as you can, without, completely dissolving into a childlike behavior, because that's not good either. You have responsibilities and so on. But I believe in the mystery of life and in the exploration of that mystery to the very highest. Sort of in the way like I'm very inspired by Hermann Hesse's book Siddhartha, which is a book, it's not about the Buddha, but it's taking place in the Buddha's time. And it is about this guy who goes on a crazy spiritual journey and ends up getting the most powerful education, the most powerful lessons from a river and a river man who isn't a holy man or anything, but he's just a river man, listening to the river, sitting there and uncovering the secrets of the river. And I think to keep that exploration mind, that whole, to not just look at a tree like this one as some whatever thing, but actually as a meaningful part of your experience when you walk past it, to witness everything to the very highest degree, and to be witnessed yourself, I think that sums it up pretty.
Yeah, I also think like there is a certain danger when person starts to be like religious or spiritual. That person might end up be overly spiritual, like 100%.
Yeah.
And I would say it's not entirely good thing. It's important not to be spiritual all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe my next question would be like, suppose I experience something.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think? How we can determine, is it like something divine, spiritual, energetic, whatever, or is just our brain, like we just had a very nice meal and just plays tricks with us? How we would define what is true spiritual thing and what is not?
What's the true black metal? What's the true spiritual experience?
Yeah, I'm just asking like from the point of view, like I'm simply
Totally, no, I get
you.
your question.
And yeah, we are talking about spirituality and whatever like experiences. But we also know that brain is like such a computer that could be fooled easily or, plug it and hallucinating totally. So I'm just like, that's the question that pops up in my brain.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. It's a question that I think anyone who is seeking spiritually should ask yourself all the time. You should always check yourself, I have a good analogy or story here. A friend of mine called Paul is a really funny guy. Lives on top of a hill, keeps to himself most of the time. Fool on the hill kind of guy, from like the Beatles song. Anyways, we were at a party, and it was really great vibes. It was a festival type thing, a type of burn. And we were on a porch, and a friend who had a kind of a little cabin right next to where the festival was taking place, and there was this guy coming up. Oh man, like, don't you just feel the vibes of this festival? Don't you just like? And Paul was just like, "Det går över," which in Norwegian means, it'll pass. So you know,
Very
but
good biblical book of Ecclesiastes. Like
was
every
that, yeah?
single Ecclesiastes, it's like
Yeah,
classic. Yeah.
it'll pass. Exactly. Yes. Exactly. Exactly. And I just thought it was so funny because, you know, it's the same thing if you're feeling, oh, my love has left me and the whole and all that thing, but you know it'll pass, right? So I think with any kind of experience that you have, try not to cling on to it. I think the moment you start clinging on to it, that's when it becomes not a spiritual thing anymore. And that's the best way I think I can answer it. I had another experience where I was at a Sesshin Zen Buddhist kind of 7-day meditation thing, meditating 10 hours a day, that sort of thing. And I finally got to one of those states that they talk about, like where I was completely empty of thought. There was no difference between me, the person sitting in front of me, the floor, the stuff that was going outside the window, the master that was sitting on his elevated thing over here. Everything was completely still and one, and it was like, and the minute I went like, hell yeah, man, I reached the place, you know, it was gone. The minute I start trying to define it, to say what it was, to really hammer down like, oh, I'm having this experience
Put
now.
it to words.
I'm having
Yeah.
this spiritual experience. Yay, now I can, oh God. And I tried to get back there, but I never got back there. It was gone, you know. So I think the way you can discern whether it's a spiritual experience or not is that try to stay in just the experience of whatever it is you're experiencing, right? Like whether it's just sitting by a tree and you start feeling, I feel this tree. The minute you start conceptualizing about the tree, you know, and what this might mean and this, that, then you're out of the pure experience. So I think spiritual experiences are more or less what you could call pure experiences. Now that's difficult to convey. That's difficult to explain properly what that is. But there are methods to get there. There are different rituals, meditations, dance, all that stuff. There are methods to get there. And once you've gotten there, once you've got a taste of it, then it's all about trying to get back there. And then it might take you 10 years. It might take you 2 minutes. But I think, yeah, I think that's what it is really. It's the best way I can explain it, because otherwise we get into materialism versus, you know, pantheism or panpsychism or all these different philosophical terms that are there to describe different ways of viewing the world. Materialism being that everything is just matter, everything's just dead matter flowing through, you know, time. It's all just mathematical and machine-like. Panpsychism and animism is everything is alive. Everything is there to communicate with you, and you're part of a, you know, communication feedback loop, that sort of thing. But that would be too big a rabbit hole to go down right now. But yeah, I think, yeah, something like that.
Yeah, I think it's important to talk about it because
It is.
I'm kind of also caught myself in a thought. I shouldn't nail down everything in this like interview or discussion. We should not define things. We should
No.
just
We're just exploring.
exploring,
Yeah.
bringing up ideas, and maybe it's a matter for the listener, for watcher of this interview, to kind of get inspired and draw their own conclusions.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's pretty obvious, but I would like to reiterate it: a rites of passage. When we think about, you know, celebrations like you get married, it's a rite of passage. That's usually a very uplifting event. But is all rites of passages supposed to be happy?
No. That's also why some of the songs on the new album are going to be quite dark. I can just briefly talk about what the album is. So the way I've conceptualized the album is I kind of wanted to make a journey of a life. So it sort of starts in the void. So that track is going to be dominated by non-forms. So a song has very strict forms, right? It'll a strict format. The rhythm is a certain thing. The tonality of it is a certain thing, and so on and so forth. The void songs are going to be chaotic in a way, ambient, kind of booming, not really anything really taking form, no rhythm really coming. no real harmonics, just kind of slightly what you would call cacophonic, but yeah, kind of showing a place that doesn't have any proper form yet. And then it goes into a birth song. And there's even going to be some darkness in that, because birth is actually a traumatic experience in a way, for everyone, you know. Tough, can be tough. And actually, you know, just to mention that briefly, it's actually when the woman kind of lets go of her and starts breathing, you know, and just starts like just really feeling what's going on in her and allows it to be what it is. That's when the actual transition can happen, right? But for the kid as well, you know, for every one of us, we're pushed through this tube, pressed together, come out. We've been lying inside that safe womb of our mother. We can hear her heart beating, with all the blood circling around. That's our sound space in there. And then we come out into this crazy 3D world where, you know, people looking at us, and it's a crazy experience. Of course, there's going to be a rite of passage song dedicated to the rite of passage from child to grown up. There's a childhood song, and even the childhood song are going to have chaotic elements, just like it is to be a child, you know, because you don't know what the fuck is going on, you know, but you're just playing around with things, you're just experiencing things, and sometimes it's going to be pleasurable and sometimes it's going to hurt, you know. So there's going to be that. And the rite of passage song obviously will be very traditional in its conceptualization. It's about a man who walks into the forest, or a boy who walks into the forest, has a dark night of the soul, as you talked about, has a dark experience, being completely alone for the first time, going through that, and then coming back to the tribe. And then, of course, the celebration is going to be there, and that's going to be expressed in the music as well. But then there's falling in love and sex. First time you experience that. That can be really, really tough as well. Sexuality, going into it, what am I going to do with this thing that I have and she has? And, you know, that whole thing can be scary as well. And of course, pleasurable once you get there. But so that's there as well. So yeah, so all the songs are going to have kind of elements of joy, but elements of darkness, difficulty, and that sort of thing. Then there's the old man and the wisdom song. That's going to be a little bit more just jolly and sort of an old man telling a story to the young ones about, hey, you know, I've lived this whole life. And he's very stoic and he's very all that kind of stuff, but he's also a little bit fun. And he's also a little bit, don't take it too seriously, you know. And then of course, death. Death is going to be the tough one, the really tough one. But that one's also going to end in acceptance of death, accepting of passing over to the other side and letting go of whatever you built here, friendships, the connections. So that's going to be a mixture of very dark but also very kind of almost like the gates of heaven opening up, kind of giant soundscapes and so on. And then back to the void, back into the undefinable, the non-shape, the NEBALA basically, which it means a mist world, right? Or the Ginnunga gap, the gaping void, if you want to use the Nordic terminology. Yeah. So yeah, that's and it's a massive undertaking, you know. It's difficult, and I'm using all kinds of different inspiration from you know, Nordic stuff, Indian things, even sort of like Sardinian folk stuff, because Ilaria, who is the singer of the band, she's from there, so she's bringing some of that into it. And of course, Christopher from Heilung is going to produce the whole thing, so it's going to have that very, which I think is the important thing when you're playing around with so many concepts and so many soundscapes and different ways of thinking in music. You need someone like Christopher to give it that one style, that one thing that's going to penetrate and make it all kind of
united,
understandable and united for everyone. Yeah.
When your album is supposed to come out? Tricky question. No?
Well, yeah, I mean, we were supposed to be done with it by now, but Christopher's going through a lot of things right now. So we thought we thought we'd wait until he had kind of gotten on the other side, and now he's having his last show with Heilung on Sunday in Dalhalla. So once he's done there, we're gonna finish it up, and I hope to release it probably sometime early next year. Yeah, February, March, something like that, without giving too much away.
Yeah, I will be looking forward to it, and I think it's very good to have this interview so people
Absolutely.
actually
Thank you.
can understand a little bit more about the album. Because, yeah, sometimes like we have that music served to us, even good music, and we are kind of lacking a little bit of explanation and background.
Sure.
And it would be nice that that information is also carried over and people can have that integral understanding.
Sure, absolutely. And I will say one thing to that though, just here at the cusp of the end. I think it's really important. I think with this kind of music, you're absolutely right. For everyone who wants to go deeper and to explore deeper and to really find out what did the artist think, they can go do that, and there'll be like interviews like this and different explanations and so on. But it's also really important to me that someone who would just hear the song, like a song from the new album, for instance, passing by someone who's playing it on a speaker, would go like, whoa, what is that? That speaks to me. I don't know why it speaks to me, but it speaks to me. So it needs to be able to speak on its own terms without all the explanation. But then if you want the explanation, if you want to dive deeper, if you want to have a deeper relationship to it, you can have that, you know? So I think both things needs to be there. It would be terrible if the music was only understandable once you had all the, you know. Make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
Actually, it's a very good point, because I myself, when I go to a museum, I sometimes got stunned by a picture, a painting.
Yes.
And the power of art is that it can convey something to you. You have that connection
Yes.
that you lock in, that you can stand like for many minutes, just like still and being in that state, ecstatic state, I would say. Also.
Yeah.
And that's really a good point.
Yeah.
That you should not have like always.
You don't need
some
all the
kind of
explanation, right? Yeah.
interpretation, and sometimes it's even maybe bad to have a specific one. It's actually what Christopher said in his interview recently, that we are listening with our brain. So like whatever comes into our brain, it kind of get filtered
Yes.
and merged, obviously, with our own consciousness.
Absolutely.
So that's like interesting point.
Yeah, he's got
fun
many
to talk
good,
about
interesting
it.
points, the old Christopher. But yeah, I mean, I completely agree, and this is also one of the things I think that's interesting with singing in languages that, I mean, it's interesting to sing in languages that people don't necessarily understand, because you get the raw feeling without all the maybe preconceived bias. You know, if I say, I love you so much or whatever, people already have a preconceived notion about what that means. But if I say something in a language they don't understand, which is supposed to convey that, they might not fully get that, but they might still get the vibe. You know, it's a more direct transmission in a way. It could be stripped of all the bias.
Yeah. And I just wonder what becomes with a person who tries to avoid any rites of passages, who tries to play it safe, like he or she is in certain state. Is it okay, or is it something dangerous in that direction? Like you are facing those steps, but you're kind of trying to really avoid any big shakes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I suppose you could do that. To me, that would just be like treating life like a long death, you know, rather than something to be explored, and with all its, like you say, risks, you know, because yeah, there's risks in everything. There's a huge risk in like saying to someone else, like a loved one, hey, I want to build a life with you, because you might lose that. Something might happen. That person might die. You might fall out, and then everything you've built you will feel like it's for nothing, you know. But I just think the other thing where you just kind of play it safe throughout life and you don't really go to any extremes and you just kind of like, that to me seems like a long death, really, to be honest. A long, sort of slow, boring descent into the netherworld. And fuck, what did you do with this life, you know? Like, I'd rather take the risk of like making a lot of mistakes and maybe get hurt along the way, maybe get really severely hurt, but I'd rather do that than to just fizzle away. Rather go out with a bang then, you know.
All right, thank you so much for this interview. Good luck
Thank
with
you.
the album and the performances. Thank you so much.
It was lovely, thank you.